Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is Think in English About Relationships. And to you, our listener joining us right now, our mission for this deep dive is it's to bridge what I consider to be a massive, often incredibly frustrating gap.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge hurdle for so many language learners out there.
Right. It's that gap between knowing English grammar, being able to ace an academic test or write a perfectly structured corporate email.
Sure, the technical stuff.
Yeah, the technical stuff. But then there's a gap between that and actually feeling, breathing, and thinking in English when it comes to real human connections. So we are stepping away from the textbook today.
We really are. We're getting into the real, messy, beautiful stuff of human life.
Yeah.
And that is the core of the issue we need to tackle today.
Because there is a trap here, right?
Without a doubt. It's a very common trap that almost everyone learning a second language falls into.
Yeah.
Often without even realizing it.
I mean, I've seen it so many times.
Right, because most people spend years, maybe even decades, practicing their English for business or for travel or for passing those standardized academic exams you mentioned.
They learn how to order a coffee.
Spot on. How to order a coffee, how to book a hotel room, how to ask for a quarterly budget report.
Or how to describe a graph in a presentation, that classic one.
A classic textbook scenario. But what happens when you need to navigate a really complex, layered argument with a close friend?
Oh, man.
Or what happens when you need to express deep, lingering disappointment to a romantic partner? Or share profound, overwhelming gratitude with a family member?
The vocabulary just evaporates. It's completely gone.
It completely disappears. People just freeze up entirely. And the reason they freeze is that true fluency isn't just about transactional communication.
Meaning just exchanging information to get a result.
That's correct. True fluency requires emotional clarity. It requires the linguistic tools to express the invisible internal states we experience every single day.
It's that terrifying moment, isn't it? For anyone listening, you know this feeling. Your heart is beating fast. You have so much you want to say.
So much you're feeling in that moment.
Yeah, but you are stuck frantically searching a mental dictionary, translating word by word from your native language.
And by the time you actually piece the sentence together, the moment has passed.
The emotional window just closes.
Or worse, the sentence comes out sounding completely robotic and detached from what you are actually feeling.
Which just ruins the connection. So, to everyone listening right now, here is our roadmap for this deep dive. We are going to help you move far beyond those basic, clunky translations.
We're going to explore the mechanics of something called relationship collocations.
We'll deeply understand the nuanced vocabulary of the four main types of relationships we all navigate.
And we'll help you avoid some massive cultural communication traps that can turn a simple conversation into an unintended conflict.
I think we need to start with the why, though.
Absolutely. Why is escaping this translation trap so critical for anyone who wants to be truly fluent?
Well, if we connect this to the broader human experience, relationships are simply ubiquitous. They are the water we swim in.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Think about a standard day for you, the listener. You are a son or a daughter. You are a friend, a partner, a coworker.
A neighbor, a mentor, a student.
Right. You are constantly connected in this massive web of social roles. But here is the truly fascinating part from a psychological perspective.
I love this part.
Even when you are completely alone, sitting in a quiet room or driving your car in silence, your internal monologue is almost always about other people.
Oh, 100%.
You're analyzing what someone said to you yesterday, or you are scripting out what you want to say to someone tomorrow.
We are all having imaginary arguments in the shower.
Yes.
I know I do it constantly. You're replaying a conversation from work thinking, oh, I should have said this, or why did they look at me like that? We all do it.
And if you are learning English, but your internal shower arguments are still running entirely in your native language, you are hitting a very hard ceiling in your fluency.
Because relationships involve emotions, and emotives are unbelievably complex.
You nailed it. When you try to take a complex emotion and translate it directly from a native language into English, it almost always sounds unnatural.
Or completely confusing to the person you are talking to.
I'm really glad you brought up the complexity of emotions, because we need to look at the limitations of basic vocabulary.
Let's do it.
Let's think about the word sad. Now, sad is a great word when you're a beginner. It gets the point across.
Sure, it works.
But human emotion is a vast, highly textured spectrum. If you look at someone and just say, I am sad, it really doesn't give them enough data to know how to respond or how to support you.
Right, because are you disappointed because a highly anticipated plan was canceled at the last minute?
Or are you hurt because of a careless, sharp comment a friend made?
Are you feeling ignored because someone hasn't returned your messages for 3 days?
That's correct. Or are you lonely because you fundamentally miss human connection? Or are you just frustrated because a situation at work feels deeply unfair?
It's fascinating how just shifting from I am sad to I feel ignored completely changes the trajectory of a conversation.
It's a subtle linguistic pivot,
Ah.
but the psychological payoff is massive.
If you are actually feeling ignored, but because you don't have that specific word ready in your mind, you just default to I am sad, your friend might try to cheer you up.
They might tell a joke or try to distract you.
And because they're distracting you instead of validating you, you end up feeling even more ignored.
Exactly. Wait, absolutely. The lack of vocabulary actually creates a deeper emotional wound.
And the same concept applies to the angry spectrum. We all know the word angry.
But anger has so many different flavors, durations, and intensities.
That is a vital distinction to make.
If you only know the word angry, you are linguistically trapped in a very small box. But what if you were just annoyed by a loud noise outside your window?
Annoyance is a mild, fleeting, temporary feeling. It doesn't require a deep conversation to resolve.
Right. But what if you are irritated because someone is constantly interrupting you in a meeting?
Irritation has a bit more friction to it. It implies a pattern of behavior that is rubbing you the wrong way.
And what if it goes deeper? What if you are resentful?
Oh, wow. Now, resentment is an incredibly powerful word.
It is a dangerous emotion. It means anger that is built up over a long period of time, usually because you feel you have been treated unfairly or your boundaries have been crossed repeatedly.
Resentment is cold anger. It sits in the background.
Or, on the other end of the spectrum, what if you are furious?
Furious implies explosive, almost uncontrollable anger. It is hot, immediate, and intense.
If you lack these specific words, you deeply limit your ability to express your true internal reality.
And as we mentioned, it inevitably leads to misunderstandings because the listener simply isn't getting the accurate emotional data they need to understand your state of mind.
Spot on.
I remember a story a friend told me. They had just moved to an English-speaking country for a new job, and they were still translating everything directly from their native language.
Oh, this should be good.
Yeah, they walked into the office one morning, the coffee machine was broken, and they loudly announced to their new colleagues, "I am furious about the coffee."
Oh, no.
Yes. Their colleagues looked at them like they were completely unhinged. They didn't realize that furious implied a level of deep, profound rage, usually reserved for intense betrayal.
Not a lack of morning caffeine.
Right. They meant they were annoyed or maybe frustrated, but by using furious, they completely altered the social dynamic of the room.
It's funny in hindsight, but in the moment, it's a real barrier to connection. That anecdote perfectly illustrates the stakes here.
It shows what all of this means for our listener.
It means your daily, casual conversations are heavily impacted by this granularity. Think about how often people ask you relationship-based or emotion-based questions in casual conversation.
Like, how is your relationship going? Or are you close to your family?
Or did you guys argue about that decision?
Yeah.
If you can't think in English about these topics, if you don't have the nuanced vocabulary loaded and ready, you are going to stumble.
But beyond just the words themselves, there is a massive cultural context here that we absolutely have to unpack.
Let's get into that because I feel like language learners often focus entirely on the mechanics, the grammar, the syntax.
And to completely ignore the culture that built the language.
Which is a fundamental mistake.
Yeah.
Emotional fluency isn't just about memorizing a dictionary of feelings. It is deeply, inextricably connected to cultural understanding.
In many English-speaking cultures, there are very specific, deeply ingrained values that actually shape the language itself.
That's correct. For instance, open, direct communication is generally highly valued. There is a strong societal emphasis on personal space, both physical and psychological.
And there is a high premium placed on emotional honesty and individual independence.
The English language has evolved to efficiently express these specific societal values. If you want to truly master the language, you have to understand the cultural water it swims in.
So, if English-speaking cultures value something like emotional honesty, they have naturally developed a very precise, varied vocabulary to navigate it.
The language is literally built for the culture.
And that brings us perfectly to the core of our deep dive today, our 5-step guide to thinking in English. We want to get highly practical and actionable for you, the listener, right now.
Step 1 of this guide is expand emotional vocabulary with context.
This means we have to completely ditch the habit of single-word memorization, those flashcards with one English word on the front and a direct translation in your native language on the back.
They have to go.
They really do.
They absolutely have to go, especially for emotional vocabulary. Learning in context is the only effective way to build genuine emotional fluency.
Let's take a seemingly simple word like happy.
Again, happy is a broad umbrella term. It gets the job done, but it lacks texture. Let's look at the specific flavors of happiness.
Okay.
You have content. Being content means experiencing a calm, peaceful, grounded sense of happiness. You aren't jumping up and down, your heart isn't racing.
You are just deeply satisfied with where you are in that exact moment.
Spot on. Then you have excited, which is high energy, forward-looking, and usually tied to anticipation of the future.
I love the distinction between those two, and then you contrast both of those with a word like relieved.
Relief is a very specific, incredibly common type of happiness. It's the happiness you feel when a heavy burden is lifted, when a problem is finally resolved.
Or when a potential disaster was successfully avoided. It's the exhale of the emotional spectrum.
That's a great metaphor. And then there's proud, which is a happiness specifically linked to a sense of achievement, either your own achievement or the achievement of someone you care about.
Let's role play this for a second so the listener can really hear and feel the difference in a practical setting.
Sure.
Imagine you and I are coworkers. We just finished a massive, highly stressful project that involved a lot of late nights and a few tense disagreements between us.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
We are sitting at our desks, the project is submitted, and I turn to you and say, I feel happy.
Well, if you just say, I feel happy, I might respond with, me too. It's polite, but it's a dead end.
It doesn't invite any deeper reflection on what we just went through.
Not at all.
But what if I look at you and say, I feel so relieved we finally solved that problem?
That immediately changes the dynamic. By using relieved, you are acknowledging the shared stress we just endured.
You are validating the fact that it was difficult, but celebrating that the difficulty is over.
It creates a moment of shared solidarity.
And what if I take it a step further? What if I say, despite the stress, I am really proud of how we handled the conflict during this project.
That is a masterclass in professional connection. That statement is profound. By using proud and linking it to how we managed conflict, you are saying that you value our working relationship.
You respect our mutual maturity, and you see the experience as a point of growth.
It builds a permanent bond of trust. You didn't just survive the conversation, you used language to strengthen the architecture of our relationship.
And that profound distinction leads us directly into step 2, master relationship collocations.
Collocations are essential.
For our listener who might not be familiar with that specific linguistic term, collocations are simply word combinations that naturally, historically stick together in a language.
They are the secret ingredient that makes a speaker sound native, effortless, and natural. Think of collocations as words that have a magnetic pull toward each other.
They just belong together through years of cultural usage.
And when a learner tries to force other words together using a direct translation from their native language, even if the grammar is technically flawless,
it sounds completely bizarre to a native speaker's ear.
It really does. Let's analyze a classic relationship collocation. Drifted apart.
Oh, that is such an evocative phrase.
It is incredibly visual. Drifting apart describes a very specific type of relationship decline. It's a situation where two close friends or even romantic partners slowly lose connection over a long period of time.
Importantly, it doesn't happen because of a massive dramatic fight or a sudden betrayal.
No, it happens just because of the gentle currents of life, geographical distance, changing career paths, evolving personal interests.
Now, if you try to take that specific concept and translate it literally from the idioms of many other languages, you might end up saying something like, we became separate slowly. Or our distance increased.
We became separate slowly. It's grammatically fine, I understand what you mean, but it feels so incredibly sterile.
It's clinical.
It completely lacks the emotional poetry and the cultural resonance of drifting apart. The English collocation evokes this gentle, almost melancholic image of two boats sitting on a quiet river.
Completely unanchored, just slowly, almost imperceptibly moving away from each other until they can no longer see one another through the fog.
When you say we drifted apart, a native speaker instantly understands the lack of animosity and the presence of that gentle sadness.
That imagery is the exact reason why you cannot learn emotional vocabulary word by word. You have to learn the collocation as one single, unified idea.
Absolutely.
Let's explore a list of these because this is the foundational architecture of talking about relationships. Let's look at the verbs we use around the concept of trust. We say build trust versus break trust.
Analyzing the verbs used in collocations gives you incredible insight into the psychology of the culture. Notice that we say build trust.
We pair trust with a verb used for construction.
We treat trust like a house or a brick wall. It implies that trust takes deliberate time, effort, and continuous labor. It happens brick by brick, day by day.
But conversely, we say break trust. We don't say deconstruct trust or unbuild trust.
We treat the loss of trust like shattered glass. It implies that something that took years to construct can be completely destroyed in a single careless instant.
Understanding those verbs gives you the cultural blueprint of how English speakers view trust. What about the phrase make an effort?
Oh, that's a good one.
I know from talking to so many language learners that there is a huge temptation to say do an effort, because in many Romance languages, for example, the verb for do and make is the same, or the direct translation relies on the verb to do.
That is a very common point of friction. In many languages, you do an action toward someone, but in English, we make an effort.
The verb make implies creation.
You nailed it. You are generating energy that did not previously exist. You are crafting something out of nothing for the sake of the relationship.
Another fascinating pairing is how we talk about arguments. We say have an argument, but we say resolve a conflict.
Let's pull that apart. Why have an argument? Have implies temporary possession.
You have a cold, you have a headache, you have an argument.
Exactly. I mean, absolutely. It is an experience you are holding on to for a specific finite moment in time. It doesn't define you, but you resolve a conflict.
To resolve means to untangle, to find a solution, to bring a process to a conclusion.
So you temporarily hold the argument, but you actively work to untangle the underlying conflict.
It's amazing how much psychology is baked into just two words. Here are a few more beautiful, essential collocations for the listener to internalize. Show appreciation, express concern, grow closer.
And one that I think we really need to pause on. Take someone for granted.
That is such a heavy, emotionally loaded phrase in any long-term relationship.
It is arguably one of the most important concepts to master if you want to understand relationship dynamics in English. To take someone for granted means you have completely stopped actively appreciating them.
You stopped recognizing their efforts because you have simply assumed subconsciously that they will always be there, continuing to do what they do.
Without requiring any maintenance or gratitude from you, you stop saying thank you for the little things. It is universally cited by relationship psychologists as a leading cause of relationship failure.
And linguistically, having that phrase gives you so much power. If you are feeling underappreciated, saying you don't say thank you anymore sounds a bit like a nagging complaint.
But if you can look at your partner and say, I feel like you were taking me for granted, that is a massive step up in emotional fluency.
It elevates the conversation from a petty grievance to a deep, systemic psychological issue.
It forces the other person to actually look at their baseline assumptions about the relationship.
It gives you analytical vocabulary, which leads perfectly into step 3 of our guide. Practice internal emotional thinking.
This is where the actual rewiring of your neural pathways happens.
We are talking about deliberately talking to yourself in English after a social event. I am so genuinely fascinated by this method. I think it is the secret weapon of language mastery.
I highly encourage you, our listener, to make a habit of the post-social review. Let's say you've just come home from a dinner party, a stressful team meeting at work, or maybe a first date.
While you are driving home or while you are standing in the bathroom washing your face,
I want you to intentionally ask yourself 3 specific questions in English. How did I feel? Why did I react that way? What could I do differently next time?
Let's do a role play of this internal monologue because I want the listener to hear what the inside of their head should sound like.
Let's do it.
Imagine I just had a really tense, awkward phone call with my sister. I'm walking around my living room processing it. My internal English voice should sound something like this. Wow, that was rough. I was really defensive during that talk. Why did I do that? I didn't even listen to her points. Every time she spoke, I just kept interrupting her. I felt attacked. But wait, was she attacking me? No, she was just expressing concern about my health. I completely misread the situation. I should call her back and apologize tomorrow.
That internal monologue is an incredibly powerful cognitive exercise. Look at what you just did in that hypothetical scenario.
I was using a lot of those key terms.
You were practicing highly complex emotional vocabulary. Defensive, interrupting, attacked, expressing concern, misread, apologize, and you were doing it in a completely safe environment.
Without the real-time pressure of another human being staring at you waiting for a response.
You were doing the heavy lifting of emotional processing in English.
It's like a dress rehearsal for real life.
Without a doubt. It means that the next time you are in a real conflict, whether with your sister or a coworker, those English words aren't buried deep in a mental dictionary.
They are sitting right at the front of your cognitive queue, ready to be deployed because you have already practiced the physical and mental act of thinking them.
Which brings us to steps 4 and 5 of our guide, roles and reflection. Step 4 is about deliberately categorizing the people in your life using English frameworks.
We tend to use generic labels like friends or coworkers.
But relationships are specific roles. To build deeper fluency, you need to ask yourself questions in English like, who is the person I rely on in a crisis? Who is the person that inspires my creativity? Who is the person that constantly challenges my assumptions?
By actively mapping your social network using English terminology, you deepen your psychological connection to the language itself.
You start to realize things like, my long-term partner gives me emotional stability, or my older mentor challenges me to step out of my comfort zone, or my childhood best friend provides pure comic relief when I'm stressed.
By assigning these specific, nuanced English roles to the people you love, you are anchoring the foreign language to the deepest, most meaningful parts of your actual life.
It stops being a language you study and starts being the language you live in.
And that anchors step 5, which is the ultimate habit for our listener, reflection. This means setting aside time for a weekly emotional check-in with yourself, conducted entirely in English.
Asking yourself the hard questions. Did I communicate my needs clearly this week? Did I inadvertently disrespect a colleague's feelings? Did I remember to express genuine appreciation to the people who supported me?
This weekly reflection acts as a psychological anchor. It forces you to hit the pause button and evaluate your own emotional intelligence, mediated entirely through English.
If you realize during this reflection, no, I didn't express any appreciation to my team this week, I was too focused on deadlines, you can make a concrete plan to do it next week.
This constant iterative cycle of action, reflection, and correction is what builds truly unshakable emotional awareness. It is the final bridge between speaking a language and feeling a language.
That cycle of reflection is powerful for the individual, but language doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens with other people.
Which brings us to the actual structures of those relationships, what we call the 4 pillars of human connection.
In part 3 of our deep dive, we're going to break down the highly specific language, the underlying psychology, and the cultural expectations needed to navigate the 4 main types of relationships.
Let's start with pillar 1, family relationships. Family. It is the bedrock. It's complicated, it's deeply loving, it can be strict, it can be distant, it is everything all at once.
Family is almost universally the most emotionally charged pillar of connection. When we analyze the language used to discuss family dynamics in English, we consistently see recurring, heavy underlying themes.
The weight of responsibility, a sense of deep obligation, unwavering loyalty, and the friction of generational differences.
The specific language we use here often reflects deep-seated cultural expectations about what a family is supposed to be.
Let's give the listener some concrete thought examples to chew on. You might have a thought like, I deeply appreciate my parents' sacrifices.
That is a very powerful, highly respectful sentiment that acknowledges the hard work and suffering of the older generation to provide for the younger one.
But on the exact same day, on the flip side of the emotional coin, you might also have the thought, I sometimes feel entirely misunderstood by my family, or I really need more independence right now.
And those conflicting thoughts are perfectly normal. Human beings are complex. Having the vocabulary to articulate both the gratitude and the frustration without feeling guilty is crucial.
Let's look closely at the concept of generational differences. This is a highly useful, very diplomatic phrase.
If you are arguing with your parents about your career choices or your lifestyle, instead of just venting to a friend and saying, my parents just don't get it, or my parents are so old-fashioned,
you can elevate the conversation. You can say, we are really struggling with some deep generational differences right now.
I love that phrase because it instantly removes the heat from the situation.
It does. It makes the conflict objective.
It acknowledges that the friction isn't necessarily a personal failure on your part, nor is it a malicious act on their part. It is simply a natural, inevitable byproduct of two people growing up in entirely different historical eras.
With different economic realities and different societal values, it is an analytical phrase that invites understanding rather than blame.
It removes the blame and creates a space for actual dialogue.
Now let's move to pillar 2, friendships. We often say friendships are the family we choose for ourselves.
In a healthy friendship, we see patterns of mutual respect, shared interests, and my absolute personal favorite characteristic, listening without judging.
Listening without judging is the absolute hallmark of a profound, enduring friendship.
It means you have successfully created a psychological safe space for the other person to be entirely vulnerable. It means they can tell you their deepest fear or confess a terrible mistake they made, and they know you will not weaponize that information against them.
It also usually implies that you share similar core values, meaning your fundamental beliefs about what is right, wrong, important, and trivial align in a meaningful way.
But as much as we love to idealize friendship, we have to talk about the toxic patterns.
Right. Not all friendships are healthy, and as an English speaker, you need the precise vocabulary to identify when a dynamic is going off the rails. You need words to protect yourself.
I completely agree. You must be able to articulate negative patterns, if only in your own mind, to protect your own peace and set boundaries. A major concept here is one-sided effort.
Well, that's a painful one.
This is a very common dynamic where you are always the one initiating contact. You are calling, you are making the weekend plans, you are reaching out to check on them, and the other person just passively receives your energy without ever reciprocating.
They are an emotional black hole.
If you can name it, if you can say out loud, I feel like this friendship is becoming a one-sided effort, you suddenly have the conceptual framework to address it or to walk away from it.
Yes, being able to name the ghost makes it less scary. The same goes for dealing with a lack of honesty or navigating hidden competition and jealousy within a friend group.
It is incredibly painful to realize that a close friend might actually be jealous of your success. But if you have that specific word, jealousy, you can analyze their strange behavior objectively.
You can look at a passive-aggressive comment they made and think, they aren't just having a bad day, they're acting out of jealousy regarding my new promotion.
It changes your entire perspective. It stops you from internalizing their bad behavior.
It provides you with analytical distance, which is incredibly protective. Now, let us shift to what is often the most intense area of human connection. Pillar 3. Romantic relationships.
This pillar involves a chaotic mix of intense physical attraction, deep emotional intimacy, long-term legal and financial commitment, and incredible psychological vulnerability.
Romance. It's the subject of 90% of the music we listen to and the movies we watch. But navigating romance in a second language is terrifying.
The stakes feel incredibly high.
One wrong word and you could ruin an anniversary or start a massive fight. You need crucial, foundational phrases to survive and thrive here. I want to highlight one of the most beautiful, modern phrases you can learn. I feel emotionally safe with you.
In contemporary relationship psychology, that phrase is considered the absolute gold standard of a healthy romantic partnership.
Emotional safety means you trust your partner implicitly. You know they won't use your intimate secrets against you during a heated argument.
You know they won't mock your irrational fears, and they will consistently support you when you are at your weakest.
If you can look at your partner and tell them, I feel emotionally safe with you, you are offering them the highest possible compliment in the modern lexicon of love.
But relationships aren't always a fairy tale. We need phrases for when the clouds roll in, too.
Things like, we need to work on better communication, or I don't feel appreciated for what I bring to this house.
And there's a specific idiom I really want to dissect here, because native speakers use it constantly when talking about relationship struggles, navigating a rough patch.
A rough patch is a brilliant, highly functional idiom. To understand it, think of driving down a smooth, freshly paved road. Suddenly, you hit a section that is filled with deep potholes, loose rocks, and broken asphalt.
It shakes the car, it's uncomfortable, and you have to slow down. That is the rough patch.
But the key linguistic implication is that the difficulty is geographical. It has a beginning and an end.
By saying, my partner and I are going through a rough patch, you are acknowledging the pain and the friction of the current moment, but you are also fundamentally expressing hope.
You are implying that if you just keep driving, the road will eventually become smooth again.
It's all about the linguistic framing. Saying we are in a rough patch is fundamentally different from saying our relationship is terrible and falling apart.
It protects the long-term viability of the romance while validating the short-term pain. Okay, let's move to our final pillar, pillar 4, workplace relationships. We are taking the deep dive into the office.
The dynamic here shifts entirely. It isn't about deep emotional intimacy or unconditional love. It's about professional respect, efficiency, and setting very clear, rigid boundaries.
The modern workplace is a highly delicate, often volatile ecosystem. You are forced by economic necessity to interact for 8 hours a day with people you did not choose.
Who have different values and communication styles, and you must do so productively. The language used here is highly focused on systems and dynamics.
You want to be able to confidently say, my team and I collaborate effectively. That is a highly professional, polished way of saying you work well together, you share ideas without ego, and you produce good results.
I hear the word toxic thrown around a lot in modern workplace culture, almost to the point where I feel it's lost its meaning. If someone disagrees with you, they are suddenly toxic.
How do we use English to differentiate between actual systemic toxicity and just standard everyday office friction?
That's a great observation. Toxic is overused. When the ecosystem is just difficult, not abusive, you need words like tension.
Saying to a manager, I've noticed there is some tension between the marketing team and the sales team, is a very professional, objective way to describe an unspoken conflict or a bad atmosphere.
It doesn't sound immature, doesn't sound like you are gossiping or whining. It sounds incredibly observant and leadership-oriented.
What about when the issue is personal to you? Let's say you are working incredibly hard, you are producing great results, but your boss never acknowledges it.
Then you need the concept of feeling undervalued.
If you are doing excellent work but getting zero recognition or financial reward, walking into a review and saying, I feel undervalued, is infinitely more powerful and professional than saying, my boss doesn't like me, or it isn't fair.
Undervalued focuses the conversation entirely on professional worth and market metrics, rather than personal feelings of rejection.
Undervalued is such a strategic word for a performance review. It logically opens the door to asking for a raise or a promotion. It says, I am an asset, and you are currently mispricing me.
Okay, listener, you are deep into this episode, and we are now moving into part 4, advanced vocabulary and dodging common mistakes.
This is where we upgrade your word bank to the absolute next level. We're going to get deeply analytical with some heavy-hitting psychological vocabulary. Let's start with a deeper look at a word we touched on earlier, resentment.
Resentment is such a complex, fascinating, and ultimately destructive emotion that it deserves a closer look. As we mentioned, it isn't hot, explosive anger. It is cold, calculating anger.
It is the long-term buildup of frustration when your core needs or boundaries are repeatedly ignored over time. Imagine you have a roommate who never, ever washes their dishes.
The first time it happens, you are just annoyed. You wash them yourself and move on. The 10th time it happens, you are frustrated. You might make a sarcastic comment.
But after a full year of washing their dishes, that has crystallized into resentment.
It's like rust on a car.
That's a perfect analogy.
It acts exactly like rust on the undercarriage of a car. It doesn't destroy the vehicle in one day, but it slowly, silently eats away at the structural foundation of the relationship until one day, seemingly out of nowhere, the entire thing collapses.
Being able to recognize that feeling and say to someone, I feel resentment building between us, is like sounding a critical warning siren before the collapse happens.
The next advanced word we need to unpack is vulnerable. We hear this word constantly nowadays. It's in every psychology book, every self-help seminar, every TED Talk.
But what does it actually mean in a practical linguistic sense?
The root of the word vulnerable literally translates to capable of being physically wounded. In a psychological context, to be vulnerable means to deliberately be emotionally open and sensitive, knowing that you could be hurt.
When you share a deep irrational fear, a piece of past trauma, or a physical insecurity with someone, you are actively making yourself vulnerable.
You are willingly taking off your emotional armor and handing them a weapon, trusting that they won't strike you.
It is terrifying, but as any relationship psychologist will tell you, that specific act of removing the armor is the only known way to build true, lasting human intimacy.
It's the prerequisite for connection. An example thought, or something you could actually say to a partner, would be, I feel incredibly vulnerable when I share my career fears with you, so please be gentle with my feelings right now.
It tells them exactly how high the stakes are. Let's move to appreciation. We all know how to say thank you, but appreciation feels conceptually bigger.
It is much bigger. Appreciation is the deliberate, active recognition of someone's inherent value and their specific actions. Thank you is often just a polite, conditioned reflex.
Someone holds a door, you say thanks.
Yeah. No.
But appreciation requires you to actively notice the nuance of what the other person is doing.
Saying to a friend, I really appreciate your honesty when we had that difficult conversation yesterday, shows that you didn't just passively receive their words. You saw their effort, you analyzed the difficulty of what they did, and you assign high value to it.
And what happens in a relationship if there is a total lack of appreciation? You eventually arrive at our next advanced word: neglect.
Neglect is the exact opposite of appreciation. Neglect means persistently failing to give enough attention, care, time, or emotional energy to a person or a relationship.
It is crucial to understand that neglect isn't necessarily active, intentional abuse. It is passive damage. It is the act of omission.
It's letting the houseplant wither and die, not because you poisoned it, but simply because you continually forgot to water it. Emotional neglect damages relationships silently and slowly.
And if you manage to recognize the neglect and you both decide to fix that damage, you hopefully reach our last advanced word: reconciliation.
Reconciliation is a beautiful, weighty word. It refers to the specific act of restoring a relationship to harmony after a major conflict, a severe betrayal, or a long period of estrangement.
It's the process of rebuilding the burned bridge. The word strongly implies that both parties have done the hard internal work, they have offered sincere apologies, they have taken responsibility, and they have mutually agreed to move forward together.
You might hear it in a sentence like, after years of not speaking, the two brothers had a tearful reconciliation. It is fundamentally a word of healing.
Okay, let's shift from single words to unpacking some vital idioms. Native speakers use these constantly to describe relationship states, and if you translate them literally, you will be completely lost. First one, on the same page.
To understand this, imagine two people reading the exact same physical book, looking at the exact same paragraph at the exact same time.
Metaphorically, it means you have a complete shared understanding of a complex situation, a mutual goal, or a specific plan.
It's used constantly in both romance and business. Before we go in and pitch this idea to the boss, let's take 5 minutes to make sure we are entirely on the same page.
What about the phrase to talk it through?
Through is the key word here. This implies a journey. It means to discuss a problem exhaustively, examining it from beginning to end, from every possible angle until a solid resolution is reached.
It acknowledges that the conversation will be a process, not a quick fix. I know we are both really upset about the budget cuts, but let's sit down, get a coffee, and talk it through.
Here is a dramatic one. Crossed a line. This one is so visual, I almost physically see it when people say it.
It's deeply visual because it refers to the concept of psychological boundaries. Imagine a literal, thick line drawn in the sand between two people.
That line represents basic respect. If someone insults you deeply, betrays a confidence, or makes an inappropriate joke, they have literally stepped over that boundary into unacceptable territory.
I can accept constructive criticism about my work, but calling me a liar in front of the team crossed a line. It indicates a severe, often relationship-altering violation of respect.
And finally, a state I think we have all felt at some point. Emotionally exhausted.
This describes a state of total, complete depletion. You aren't just physically tired from running a marathon, your internal emotional battery is at 0%.
You have absolutely nothing left to give to a conversation, an argument, or another person. We've been arguing in circles about this wedding planning for 3 hours, and I am emotionally exhausted. We need to pause this and sleep.
These phrases aren't just vocabulary, they are armor and tools for you, the listener. But even with a great word bank, learners constantly make practical errors. Let's talk about mistake 1, over-translating cultural drama.
I always find it fascinating and sometimes a bit funny how incredibly dramatic some literal translations sound when English learners bring idioms over from highly expressive, high-context cultures.
It is a very well-documented phenomenon in linguistics. Many cultures, particularly Romance or certain Middle Eastern cultures, use grand, highly poetic, almost theatrical language to express affection, loyalty, or emotional pain.
When those phrases are translated literally, word for word, into English, they can completely overwhelm or even frighten the English-speaking listener. English speakers, generally speaking, favor a more grounded, balanced, and sometimes understated emotional language.
Yes. If you take a classic Spanish or Arabic declaration of romantic love and translate it directly into English, you might end up looking at a date across a table and saying, I cannot survive without you. You are the very air I breathe.
In a soap opera or a dramatic movie, maybe that works. But if you say that in a coffee shop in London on a third date, you're probably going to terrify the person sitting across from you. They will think you were dangerously obsessed.
Triggers alarm bells rather than romance. The English equivalent, which carries the exact same depth of genuine feeling but respects the cultural preference for emotional balance and individualism, would simply be something like, "You mean so much to me," or "I deeply value having you in my life."
To a non-native speaker, that might feel cold or less dramatic, but culturally, it hits the exact same deep emotional frequency without violating the cultural norm of independence.
It's all about pragmatics. That leads to mistake 2 and 3, which are deeply intertwined. Avoiding discomfort and misusing tone. I've noticed in my experience that learners often completely avoid using emotional "I feel" statements because saying them out loud in a new language feels physically and psychologically awkward.
They feel like an actor on a stage. It limits their fluency so much. I always want to tell people listening, lean into that awkwardness. Embrace it.
Practice looking in the mirror and saying, "I feel hurt," or "I feel insecure about my accent," or "I feel overwhelmed by this project." It will feel weird the first 10 times you do it, but pushing through that discomfort is what sets you free linguistically.
You absolutely must embrace that temporary discomfort. And as you start bravely using these emotional words, you must simultaneously master mistake 3, which is the misuse of tone. Tone is the music of a language.
And in English, perhaps more than some other languages, the music completely and utterly changes the dictionary meaning of the words.
Let's do a masterclass on one of the most dangerous words in the English language, the word fine. Oh, I love this exercise. Okay, I will give you 3 different relationship scenarios, and I want you to analyze the tone and the actual meaning. Scenario 1, I've been sick with a bad cold all week. I walk into work, a colleague smiles and asks, "Hey, how are you doing after your cold?" I say, "Oh, I'm fine," with a bright, energetic, slightly higher-pitched voice.
In that specific case, the tone is upbeat and light. Because of the music of your voice, fine literally means exactly what the dictionary says it means. Good, healthy, recovered, and perfectly okay. There's absolutely no hidden subtext or hidden meaning to analyze.
Okay, that's the easy one. Scenario 2. My partner and I had plans to cook dinner at 7 p.m. They show up at 9 p.m., 2 hours late. They rush through the door, apologize frantically, and ask if I'm okay. I look down at my empty plate, let out a slow sigh, and say in a very flat, short, unexpressive voice, "I'm fine."
In this scenario, the word fine means the absolute polar opposite of fine. The flat, monotone delivery and the short, clipped pronunciation of the word act as a massive warning signal of passive aggression.
It translates to, I am incredibly angry, I am deeply disappointed in your lack of respect for my time, and you are in a massive amount of trouble, but I refuse to yell about it right now.
If a language learner misses that flat tone and relies purely on the dictionary definition, they might smile and say, "Great, let's eat," which will immediately ignite a massive relationship-ending fight.
It is the ultimate trap for a learner. Okay, last one, scenario 3. I've just had a long, terrible, deeply stressful 12-hour day at work. I walk in the door, drop my bag, someone asks how I am. I drop my shoulders, look at the floor, and say in a quiet, drawn-out, almost whispery voice, "I'm fine."
Here, the music of your voice is entirely defeated. The elongation of the word implies exhaustion. It translates to, "I am deeply sad, profoundly exhausted, or completely overwhelmed by life, but I literally do not have the cognitive or emotional energy required to explain it to you right now, so please just let me rest."
The dictionary word remains identical in all 3 scenarios, but the tone completely 100% dictates the emotional reality.
Okay.
You have to practice actively listening for this musicality in movies and podcasts and in the daily conversations around you.
It's all about the music. You have to learn to sing the language, not just speak it. Let's move to mistake 4, and I think this is a massive, highly consequential distinction in English, especially in the corporate world. The difference between responsible and to blame.
This specific linguistic confusion causes so many unnecessary, bitter arguments in the workplace and in marriages. Responsible means you possess a duty, an obligation, or the authority to manage a situation or a thing. It is inherently a neutral, or often highly positive, leadership term.
To blame, however, means you are the guilty party who caused a negative event to occur. It implies fault and wrongdoing. It is entirely negative.
Let's use a high-stakes workplace scenario to highlight this. A major, multi-million-dollar software project fails to launch on time because of a tiny coding glitch deep in the system. The project manager calls a meeting. If the manager stands up in front of the executives and says, I am to blame for this delay, what are they actually saying?
They are essentially confessing to a crime. They are saying, I personally wrote the bad code, I broke the software, the failure is my direct fault, and I am guilty. They are inviting punishment.
But what if that same manager stands up, looks at the executives and says, I take full responsibility for this failure?
The psychology in the room shifts completely. They are saying something incredibly mature. They are saying, I didn't personally write the bad code, I didn't break the software, but because I am the designated leader of this team, it is my inherent duty and obligation to manage the fallout, protect my team, and oversee the fix.
Taking responsibility projects high-level leadership, integrity, and maturity. Taking the blame simply implies guilt and incompetence. Knowing the nuanced difference between these two concepts allows you to fiercely protect your professional reputation while still demonstrating strong personal accountability.
I take responsibility for my mistake. It was such a grounding, powerful sentence. Okay, we have covered so much theory, but we need to see it in motion. We are entering part 5, real-life application and the long-term strategy.
We are going to actually role-play some real dialogues right now so the listener can hear all of this complex theory in dynamic action. I'll set up the scenarios, we play the parts, and then we'll break down why it works psychologically and linguistically.
I think this is the best way to synthesize everything. I'm ready.
First scenario. This is a classic conflict resolution. We are friends, and I'm upset you didn't call me back. I'll start. Hey, why didn't you call me yesterday? I waited around all evening.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I got completely overwhelmed with work and was just so busy.
Well, when you didn't call, I felt really ignored.
Wow, I didn't realize my silence had that impact on you. I'm truly sorry.
Okay, let's pause the role play. Why is that exchange so successful compared to how these fights normally go?
It is a beautiful example of emotional honesty successfully de-escalating a situation. Look at your line. You did not attack me. You didn't use an accusatory your statement like you always ignore me or you are so selfish.
Accusations instantly trigger the listener's fight or flight response, making them defensive. Instead, you used an I statement combined with precise emotional granularity. I felt ignored. You simply stated your internal emotional reality.
Because it wasn't an attack, I didn't feel the need to defend my ego. I was able to receive your emotional data, acknowledge the unintended impact of my actions, and offer a sincere, clean apology. This is what high-level emotional fluency looks like in the wild.
It's so clean. There's no dramatic subtext, just pure clarity. Let's do another one. Scenario 2 is about showing deep appreciation. We are coworkers, and I helped you finish a presentation.
Here are the final slides. Good luck in the meeting, and let me know if you need anything else.
Thank you so much for supporting me on this. I really appreciate it.
Of course, I believe in you. You're going to do great.
Let's break that down.
What stands out to me here is the profound depth of a seemingly short exchange. My line, thank you for supporting me, successfully uses a great relationship collocation. But your response is where the real linguistic magic happens.
Instead of just relying on the transactional robotic reflex of you're welcome or no problem, you chose to say, I believe in you. That short phrase completely transcends the workplace task.
It validates my inherent worth, boosts my confidence before a stressful event, and permanently strengthens the emotional bond of our working relationship. You used English to transform a mundane, polite exchange into a highly significant emotional touchpoint.
I genuinely felt a connection just saying it in role play.
Okay, final one, scenario 3, setting boundaries. This is incredibly hard for learners. We are friends, but I'm exhausted and you are asking for a favor.
Hey, can you come over and help me move this heavy furniture again tonight? Oh, man. I'd really like to help you out, but I'm completely exhausted and I need time to rest tonight.
Why does that work so well?
That response is an absolute masterclass in setting polite yet immovable boundaries. Let's look at the architectural structure of your sentence. You started with immediate validation. I'd really like to help you out.
This crucial first half softens the incoming rejection. It reassures me that you care about me and your intentions are good. Then comes the actual boundary, connected by the pivot word, but. I need time to rest tonight.
You clearly stated your own physical and emotional need without over-apologizing, without feeling guilty, and without making up a convoluted, fake excuse about having other plans. It is honest, it is deeply respectful of the friendship, and most importantly, it protects your own well-being.
Okay, listener, we have given you the theory and the examples. Now, we want you to be able to actually execute this every single day. So we have designed a highly practical daily improvement plan for you. We are going to break your day into 3 manageable parts. Let's start with the first thing you do. the morning intention.
When you wake up, while you're standing in the kitchen making your morning coffee or looking in the mirror brushing your teeth, I want you to ask yourself two specific questions, exclusively in English. First, how do I feel today? And I want you to push past the basic vocabulary. Don't just say, I feel tired.
Dig deeper into the granularity. Am I feeling anxious because I have that big presentation at 2 p.m.? Am I feeling content because it's a sunny Friday morning? Am I feeling resentful because of an argument I had last night? Name the exact feeling.
Second question, who do I want to appreciate today? Set a conscious goal to find one person, a barista, a coworker, a spouse, and express genuine, specific appreciation to them using the advanced vocabulary we've discussed.
I love that practice. It intentionally sets the emotional and linguistic tone for your entire day. Then we move into the daytime observation phase. Throughout your day, I want you to pretend you are a linguistic detective.
Watch how native speakers or highly fluent speakers around you navigate their emotions. Watch how your boss resolves a conflict in a stressful meeting. Listen very carefully to how a friend apologizes when they make a mistake. Are they stepping up and taking responsibility, or are they defensively deflecting blame? Notice the collocations they use naturally.
That's spot on. You are passively absorbing the complex data of the language in its natural, unpredictable habitat. You are seeing how the theories we discussed actually live and breathe in real time. Finally, we end with the evening reflection.
Before you go to sleep, sit on the edge of your bed and review your day. Ask yourself, did I communicate my thoughts clearly today? Did I listen actively and without judgment when someone else was speaking? Did I react emotionally and impulsively to a problem? Or did I respond calmly and thoughtfully? This entire routine takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes a day total, but I promise you the compound interest on this daily habit is staggering over the course of a few months. But beyond the daily routine, we also need a macro view. Let's give our listener the long-term mastery blueprint. They want to truly think and feel in English. What should they be doing over the next year?
The ultimate long-term blueprint requires deep, consistent immersion in heavy emotional content. First, you must read novels. Don't just stick to sterile business books, self-help manuals, or news articles. You need to read fiction that features strong, complex, emotional dialogue.
Novels are the absolute best resource because authors spend months painstakingly choosing the exact perfect words to express the nuances of love, anger, terror, and deep doubt. By reading fiction, you will see all the advanced vocabulary and collocations we've discussed embedded in perfectly constructed, highly contextual scenarios.
Yes. And to pair with that, watch long-form, unscripted interviews on YouTube or podcasts. Don't just watch tightly scripted Hollywood movies where every line is polished. Watch real, messy interviews where real people are talking unscripted about their childhoods, their family struggles, or their romantic failures.
You will hear the natural hesitations, the shifting tones of voice, the pauses, and the real-time emotional vocabulary that actual humans use when they're being truly vulnerable.
That is a phenomenal resource. And finally, and most importantly, you must proactively practice having deep conversations. Find a dedicated language exchange partner, a highly trusted friend, or a patient tutor, and intentionally bring up heavy philosophical topics.
Ask them directly, what specific qualities do you think make a healthy relationship? Or how do you personally handle feelings of intense jealousy? These conversations will force you to stretch your English capabilities to their absolute breaking point. You will definitely stumble, you will pause, you will struggle to search for the right words.
And when you inevitably do stumble, I want you to remember this vital truth. Mistakes are the mechanism of growth. We hear it all the time in language learning, but it is deeply true here. I want to explicitly remind you, the listener, right now, fluency is not the same thing as perfect grammar accuracy.
You can have flawless, textbook perfect grammar and still be a terrible, ineffective communicator. True fluency is emotional clarity. It is the profound ability to show the world exactly who you are, what you value, and what you feel, and to deeply understand who others are using this incredible complex tool called the English language.
That is the ultimate core philosophy of everything we've discussed today. Do not wait for your English grammar to be 100% flawless before you start having real, messy, meaningful conversations.
Start thinking in English today. Start feeling your emotions in English today. Start doing your internal reflections directly in English tonight. If you consistently apply the steps we've meticulously outlined, expanding your context, mastering the collocations, conducting your internal shower monologues in English, you will soon notice a profound, magical shift in your brain.
You will completely stop frantically searching that internal mental dictionary. You will stop trying to translate complex emotions from your native tongue. You will simply exist in the language, and you will connect with people instantly and authentically.
You will just be in English. It becomes a part of your identity.
And that brings us to the end of our incredibly deep journey today. But before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, fascinating, almost philosophical thought to ponder on your own time. Throughout this deep dive, we've talked extensively about the immense challenges and frustrations of trying to express complex emotions in a second language. But could the very act of thinking about your emotions in English actually give you a psychological superpower?
It's a very compelling theory.
Think about it. Recent psychological and linguistic studies actually show that processing a heated argument, a stressful decision, or a deep, painful feeling in a second language physically forces your brain to slow down. Because it naturally takes a bit more cognitive effort to process the foreign vocabulary, it accidentally creates a layer of psychological distance between you and the raw, hot emotion.
Does this mean that having an internal argument in English might actually make you calmer, more highly objective, and significantly less reactive than you would be if you processed it in your native tongue?
It's a wild, fascinating thought. The very fact that English is your second language might actually make you a better, more rational, more thoughtful partner and friend. Chew on that profound idea the next time you are having an internal monologue in the shower.
That's a great thought to end on.
Like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.